Hey, Shannon.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and just two guys talking about getting molested, you know?
All the things that we could be discussing about this world, we have to be doing this because we just don't get the attention, I think, that it deserves from maybe the male side.
Yeah.
And it probably happens all the time in the industries, but, men don't usually want to fess up to it.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
The man, we have this concept that masculine, you got to be masculine in this world.
Yeah.
Anything other than that, you're just not as acceptable to, and then they don't realize how much support they probably would get.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's the masculinity aspect of things. It's like you got to hold this image, this sort of facade. And it's like, getting molested doesn't make you any less masculine. But in your head at the time, it sure feels like it. It's like, that's not a very manly thing to have had happen to me.
But, it takes more of a man to actually talk about it.
Definitely. That's part of why I wanted to reach out to you is just, I saw your TikTok about your story and it's it's just so encouraging. I mean, for all victims, but I think especially when men see other men talking about it, it just makes you recognize that you're not alone and just feel more comfortable sharing your own story. And that's
exactly. And I was reading the comments because I really try to focus on responding to every comment in this situation because people are giving you a more personal response. Mm-hmm. So I felt it deserved my response no matter how many comments I got. But the amount of people who said, I know what you're feeling. I mean, I was just like, wow. I mean, there's just so many people out there. And I think, they don't want to do the video, but they enjoyed that I did the video and told me that it happened to them. And of course, then I reached out to them,
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think part of why it's been a problem for so long is just because people are too uncomfortable to bring it up. And if we can normalize these conversations, it's just going to open the floodgates for people around the world to be coming forward and sharing their stories. So I commend you for sharing yours on TikTok, and I really look forward to hearing it now. So Shannon, what happened to you?
Basically, well, let me tell you this. My first memory was me watching my uncle put some flowers out in front of the house for my mom one time, and I opened the door. It was sunny out. It was summer. It was beautiful. He was like, hey, you want to help? And I helped him rake, and I was feeling good. I was like, wow, I'm helping my uncle.
Yeah.
And then not too long after that, we moved, and after that is pretty much where my last good innocent moment was left. Mm-hmm. Because after that, I started getting molested by my brother, my cousins, teachers, for probably 10 to 13 years. It kept going. Maybe not so much for my brother. It did stop because he did live in a bigger city away from where I was. Mm-hmm. But I remember still having to go and try to, just totally scared of going because I knew what was going to happen when I got there, especially at that first time,
Yeah. So what was that first experience like? Was your first molestation experience with your brother?
It was.
And how did that happen?
Well, I had to go to New York City to visit my brother because I've never really met him at this point because, he was older than me. So I went, didn't think anything of it. I was actually kind of excited. And then he lived in a small little studio in the city and got in there. And it was like, to me, it felt like almost immediately he had his pants down and wanted me to play with him. Mm-hmm. Both sides. So it was just like, what's going on? Like, I didn't, I think that's probably the worst because that was the first experience. Mm-hmm. There was several more. He even done it in my mother's house. But I think that was probably the most difficult because he was my brother.
Right. And what age were you at that point?
I was between 6 and 8-ish.
Yeah.
We had a bad relationship ever since then, obviously.
Yeah.
He's long passed away, over 20 years ago, but I did forgive him. Nice. I never told him I forgave him. I remember when he was passing away, everybody went to go see him, and I didn't want to go see him. I just was okay with whatever he was going through. It was going out in my life. And then...
Or how did you get to the point where you forgave him?
Well, if you don't start forgiving things that you had no control over, then I'm not going to keep taking the blame for it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, what did I do? Why am I getting this? Before I go into that, I used to literally, because I did contemplate after that happened, suicide a lot.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would just sit there and I pull my hair and I just rock and cry like, why me? Why me? Why me? Why me? What did I do? Why do I deserve this? You know, praying to God, trying to hope there was a God or something. That lasted a very long time. That feeling of hate, you know, like I just hated. I hated, and I couldn't stand hating anymore.
Yeah.
So of course it was later in life before I kind of forgave him. I was in the military at this point. I haven't seen him in so long. I didn't need to tell him I forgave him. I just needed to know that I forgave him, that I was the victim.
Yeah.
And then it's probably sad to say this, but, you know, like when he passed away, I kind of felt like, you know, maybe that's my karma.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that because I don't know if it's right to say it, but, you know, like when my family kept asking me, you know, call him, just call him. He's waiting to hear from you. And, last minute I called him. I cried, of course, because, you know, it's sad to see someone pass away, you know, but I was like, let me call him if that's what he wants. And maybe I'll get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And got nothing out of it. So I was just like, bye. And not too long after that, he passed away.
Mm-hmm. That's a tough situation to be in. I mean, it's a
whole bunch of emotion.
Yeah, no kidding. You know, I was fortunate to not have to be like, I was molested by my friend's dad. So, you know, we were never talking on the phone or anything like that.
Right.
But
you saw him all the time.
Yes. And it's so funny that you were talking about forgiveness and stuff, because I literally saw him earlier this week because I'm home just for the holidays. And I saw him in Safeway, which is like the town grocery store or whatever. And it's funny because it's kind of like running into an ex. You know, like you get nervous and you're like, are you still trying to fuck me? You know, right? But then what I noticed is that because every time I've seen him in the past, I've always felt worried and scared and like angry, just sort of even though we weren't interacting, just seeing him caused me to feel all of that. And when I saw him this time, I didn't feel any sort of negative emotion towards him at all.
Is that a sign of a survivor?
I think so, man. It felt so good. I was thrilled. I mean, it was just like the most freeing feeling of not having any feelings towards it. And, you know, I've talked to people that are very much the opposite in regards to their feelings towards their abuser, where they're like, I want, you know, this person to suffer, and I want vengeance and all of that. And
that concentration.
Yes. And I totally empathize with that scenario. But I think having experienced the feeling that I have now, I think that there is a tremendous amount of value in letting go of those emotions that you've been harboring. But again, it's not for everybody. There's no right way to do this. But anyway, so back to your story. So this happened with your brother. That was an ongoing experience. When did that stop?
I would say right around the beginning of my teenage years. And it didn't happen on a consistent basis. Luckily, didn't live in the same area.
Yeah.
But it was that like, oh God, he's coming to visit. Right. It's Christmas time. He's coming to visit. And then he, you know, like, I actually had a bedroom this one time. I come from a really weird family, but I actually had a bedroom this time, and he had come over, and it was holiday time, and he literally got into my bed. And, you know, in the other rooms we're sleeping, but, you know, mother is in the other room, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do at this point?
Yeah.
And I've already had other experiences in between then with other people that I just felt like, you know what, people just want to use me. And I was kind of used to it. Just whatever you want, get it over with. I go back to sleep.
Kind of numb to it, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and it's disgusting to say that, you know, because like, you know, like when my cousin used to come over and there was just like this little shack in the driveway. I don't even know why it was there, but it was there when we moved in. And he used to make me go out there just to give him a blowjob. And I remember puking, tears coming down my eyes and just doing it. And then I would say quite a few years ago, when I actually told my siblings what my brother did and my cousins did, my brother said, you know, I had a feeling that was happening to you.
Really?
With the cousin. Like, I don't know why he had that feeling, but he just had that feeling. He's like, I always remember having that feeling that he was doing that to you. I just didn't know. I was like, well, why didn't you ask me? What's that?
This is a different brother.
Yeah, my mom had, I don't know who my dad is. I was never told.
Gotcha.
But my mom had 6 kids altogether, but she had 3 different guys with these kids. So everybody was pretty much a half.
Right. So there had a hunch that this was happening with your cousin, but not. Yeah. Right. Ask me. Yeah. Why? Follow your gut, man. Give me a.
You let me go through all that time. You probably could have done something years ago.
Yeah. Do you know why he did he elaborate on that?
No. And I never just went back to it because I'm not trying here to relive this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm glad you told me that you had a feeling. Yeah. But I just wish you would have took that gut feeling and went a step further, especially if you're a parent, right? If you're a parent and you have that gut feeling, say it.
Yeah, at least developing like an open line of communication between the kid and ideally the parents, but siblings too. That's sort of what I've found doing this podcast and just, hearing people reach out and share their experiences is that so often it's family members, which just adds this other level of complication to the situation because let's say your brother who had that feeling wanted to act on it, but then he's like, fuck, now I'm accusing my half brother of molesting my other half brother without any sort of, I haven't seen it happen. It's a hard thing to just bring up, but we have to just recognize that until we can get over that level of discomfort, we're not going to be able to actually make a difference in preventing this stuff.
Right. Exactly.
So, it just comes down to sort of a lack of education about these topics and a lack of understanding about how big and common of a problem it is. That is really interesting though. Did he have any hunch about your brother or just the cousin?
Just the cousin. Yeah. That's the only thing he ever said was, the cousin thing. I don't know why that one, but I do know that going through that, and I grew up in a very poor family and, my mom wasn't the greatest mom to all of her kids. Like they all experienced some type of physical or emotional abuse from her. She was led the same way when she was a kid, so it's not, sometimes she just carried it on. She didn't break the cycle. She carried the cycle.
Yeah.
That's where I chose to break a cycle. But those instances that happened, I was like, ooh, everybody likes to use me. I don't have money. I like to have something other than, I don't know if you know what a skip is, but they're like cheap shoes back in the day and you used to get made in front of and bullied because of it.
No.
So I don't want to keep going and get bullied because of my shoes, So I was like, well, I need food. I need to get stuff that I want. I started prostitution because I felt numb to, if you're going to use me, I might as well make some money off it.
Interesting. And what age was that at?
Oh, I definitely started that about 13, 14.
Wow.
And I did that till about 16-ish.
How does one initiate their own prostitution at 13?
Well, I don't know, actually. I think I might have known somebody who just kind of do it, like from my friend's family, because my friend who brought me up, she took me in when I was a young kid, when I was about 6. Mm-hmm. I was locked out the house. Everybody was gone. So my neighbor saw me out there crying late at night. So she brought me in. She had like a 3-year-old daughter. I was like 5 or 6. So we're only a few years apart.
Yeah.
So she brought me in, gave me hot cocoa. I stayed the night there and I went home. I actually lived next door to her. And then I pretty much ended up living there because I got more what I wanted. I had the roof over my head. I had food. They had more kids. And then one of their kids started to molest me.
Oh, man.
And it was like, well, if you say anything, you're not going to have what you have now. You're going to lose it all.
Yes. That is the exact thought process that I had too. I was like, fuck, if I speak up, I'm going to lose my friend. I remember just like we could play unlimited video games at my friend's house. And at my house, we could only play for an hour a day. And in my head at the time, I was like, fuck, I don't want to not be able to play Mario Kart for 14 hours a day. And I know that if I speak up, I'm going to lose. Obviously, it's different. You're dealing with more intense things like having a roof over your head and stuff. But it's the same thought process of not wanting to lose the experience that you have, but at the same time knowing that you don't want what's going on to continue going on. It's tough.
So why I was going through that with him, now him, it was often, but it wasn't routinely, but I never knew when it was coming. I mean, one day, I had to go upstairs to get something for I called her mom, and next thing you know, I'm bent over.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, you know what I mean? And I still remember that the clothes are all over and I'm looking to the right because that's where you can see the outside, and I'm just sitting there saying, okay, just do what you got to do. Let me continue on,
Right. That was when you were 6, like roughly?
No, that was more in the teenage years.
Okay. So you were living in another house for the majority of your childhood.
Yes. And then the mom used to make me steal for her. So I was being used again.
Wow.
Like my friends' Christmas gifts every year for years was all because of me. I was their Santa.
Yeah.
They're like, hello, I'm right here. You can say Merry Christmas to me, put me in a Santa suit and just let me sit there knowing that all the gifts came from me, So I guess it's just always these things where I just knew I had to be tough at a young age. Yeah, I might have been broken, but I knew how to survive.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, you want me to steal, but I can eat what I want. I can have a sleep here. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to use them for my own benefit so that I'm not, being at home, because I didn't like being at home because my mom was dating this alcoholic guy and I didn't want to be around that. Mm-hmm. So you always have to weigh your options, and throwing all this stuff at you in just a short amount of life, you tend to get street smart, like I walk the streets and I was walking the street one time and, looking to make some money, and this brown Cadillac pulled up, Lincoln, those old long Lincolns. And he pulled up and I walked up to his car and he started talking to me and I knew he wanted to do something with me. But then he pulled out these stack of photos and I will never forget this, about this much. And he started going through them, it's like, all boys wearing different clothing, naked boys.
Yeah.
Other minor boys.
Right.
And he was showing me, he said, don't you want to be part of them? Don't you want to meet them? And I was like, what you're doing is not good. And I'm not touching this. And I walked away. And then he ended up doing a U-turn, came back, he's like, you're a smart boy. I don't know why. He could have controlled me, right?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe it was something about my smartness, or I caught on to him that he just didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Or that became a threat to him.
That's bananas. Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, how did you figure out, okay, this is the street corner where 13-year-olds pimp themselves out?
Because you just walk. Well, if I go to one part of my city, I know that's kind of more of back in the day, I'm going to go back in the day, more of a white, high middle-class people. You're not going to catch that kind of people walking around those streets because the streets are different. Yeah. Right? If I do that in the other section, it's almost similar, just lower class, mixed middle people. And then if I stay in these two sections, money all day long. Wow. Because that's where generally more of the poorer people are. It's very mixed with everybody. So it's not that hard to go walk the street for 15 minutes and get someone to follow you, because they start following you a little bit. And you're getting eye contact. They're trying to confirm. Oh, I can't believe I remember all this stuff, But,
yeah. You have did you set your prices? Did you have a menu of options, or how did that work?
I knew a little bit about money, and I knew what it was worth. So I knew what they were asking for, what it would be worth.
Yeah.
And that's what I played it on. If I make $75 one day, well, you know what? I can go get a couple pairs of shoes. I could buy a pair of jeans, Yeah. So that got me further because, I couldn't just go out and, my family just couldn't go and buy me clothes. Now, at this point, I could have stole, but funny, I never stole for myself.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then one time, she gave me a list to go steal, back to that, and I got caught first time ever. I was a minor. They brought me back to her house because that's the address I gave them. She slapped me in the face, told me she was ashamed of me, and kicked me out of her house.
For stealing for her.
For her.
Wow. That's tough. That's a tough one. And then, so now
after that, I really never went back that much after that.
Yeah. So where did you go? How did you survive?
I had to stay back home.
Back to your original house.
Yeah. Until I got ready to join the Marines, I was like, this is my ticket out of here. I'm timid. I had all these things happen to me. I need to go somewhere where I can be safe. I can, have my own career, have a place to stay. I don't care what it is, but I want to wear that uniform and I'm going.
So you went to the Marines. So you were molested by your brother, cousin, the brother of the new house that you went to, right? And then obviously the prostitution and everything. Mm-hmm. You also said that you were molested by teachers?
Yes. That was in between the 7 to 8 up until about 13-ish to the one school that I went to. And it first started with the teacher coming up behind me and pushing his body against mine.
Is this just in math class or what?
No, this was art class. Okay. So it's more spread out. You have the counters where you can, you have all your stuff out there.
Yeah. During class, like not
during
like
class.
wow.
And we're all little kids, so the other kids are not paying attention to this, right? I mean,
Of course. Like
it's right there in front of them.
Yeah, but nobody's looking for it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, over here, help, you know? It's like, yeah, that shit, you know, you ain't getting no help today, you know?
Painting. Help me.
So it started with him just kind of pushing his penis against me.
Yeah.
Against my body, because obviously I was smaller, but you could still, I knew what he was doing. I've already been through this, right? So it was like, obviously I know what you're doing. I felt like, hey, $25, you know, maybe we could talk, you know? But, you know, I wasn't that gutsy.
Teacher's discount? Like, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and then it started to where he would take my hand and put it on his penis.
Yeah.
You know, and the next thing you know, it was inside his pants. So, and it's just like, you know, like I used to skip the class often just so I didn't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because it was a class that I knew that I could make up and not fail because it's just an art class. It's not like English and math, you know, all those ones that you were required to be there. Yeah. So it's easy to make up certain classes, and that's what I did. And I did it during summer school.
Yeah,
I was a smart little guy. I mean, yeah, I might have been timid. I might have been let these people do things to me, but I think at the same time I learned how to play the system.
Yeah, at least you made some money off of it, man. I was breaking in no dollars per molestation.
See, you got to go where the money is. Money talks.
I know. I needed your contact info, man. We could have started a business together.
But I think, though, because of all that, I think to this day, I still have a problem. I have a sexual problem. Because I don't know if you remember that in my video, you know, when I was getting paid to do prostitution, I kind of went to free because at this point I was becoming sexually mischievous. I don't know what the right word is, but I very got into sex.
Like promiscuous, yeah.
Yes, like one was never enough. I always had to have someone different, you know? And that's a hard thing to struggle with because, you know, like those days I would have 6, 7 different people. I didn't care because I got that moment of something. And that little moment of something was better than a moment of nothing. And if I was in a moment of nothing, will my past go and still hurt me mentally?
So you think it might have been an attempt to escape from past experiences?
I think so. I think so. I don't know if everybody has these different things that they do when, you know, they are surviving, like things that still kind of lasting effects.
Yeah.
But for me, you know, like when I'm in a relationship, I'm dedicated to it. I won't cheat or anything. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I'm not in that, and even in a relationship, I get very sexual. Like, and I'm trying to, I hate to talk about this stuff, but it's still part of, I think, where it came from is like, I get into that whole submissive, dominant, handcuffing, you know, hitting, choking. And I don't know why, except for maybe there's still remnants of all that stuff that I went through before.
I think that's definitely probably what it is. The last lady who came on the podcast, Lori Mitchell, she's Sky Blue on TikTok. You might know her. She's a big child abuse advocate, and she was talking about how when she was getting molested when she was, you know, very young, she would have orgasms from her abuser. And now she oftentimes will need to be in the same physical situation or mental sort of in the same state of mind in order to orgasm. Like now, even, you know, many, many years later. And I think it totally makes sense because it's just, that's our first exposure to this kind of stuff. And when it happens even before puberty has even hit yet, oftentimes, you know, it has lasting effects. And it's hard to point to things and be like, okay, I'm into this because I got molested. You know, it's hard to definitively say that. But it inevitably affects you in all sorts of ways. Not, you know, some people might not be affected by it sexually at all, but can be completely affected by it emotionally. Just in the same way that we were talking about how people handle these things, it's just different for everybody. But yeah, man, that's quite a resume of molestation you got there. So you were at a point after all of this happened, and
you forgot something.
What's that?
I was raped a couple of times in the Marines.
Yeah. So yeah, please tell me about the Marines.
Because now we're talking about rape versus molestation.
Yeah.
So, you know, my first experience in NCO in the Marine Corps is, you know, you start earning your rank, you become a non-commissioned officer. I wasn't an NCO yet. I was still kind of new.
And what age?
Maybe 20, 21. I went in when I was 2 weeks later. I was 19. So probably about 20-ish, more like it, because it was my very first unit. I got there in January of 93. You know, like 8 months later, we went to Somalia and Bosnia and all that stuff. So it started before then. But
you had got into the Marines so that you could escape this stuff, right?
I wanted a new life. Like, I was like, hey, I got this whole new freaking life. I'm just going to start out fresh, you know? I was a very timid guy, and my best friend, who was in my team, you know, he's still my best friend. He knows a lot about all this stuff, you know? And when I told him some of these things, he just could not believe. He's like, why didn't you just come to me? You know, I was like, well, you just don't do that, especially I wasn't in a place to do it yet. You know, like mentally I wasn't ready. But when I remember when that NCO called me to his room, and you listen, you know, I corporal, I sergeant, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And then he's like laying on the bed face down.
He did that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And then he pulled my pants down and didn't do anything but stick it right in. It's kind of like Brokeback Mountain. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No segue. No.
I mean, I was Brokeback Mountain before there was Brokeback Mountain, you know?
Yeah. Brokeback Mountain's got nothing on your story. I feel like you can do a movie on your experience. Yeah. So,
and
are you guys like interact? Like, is there any communication while that's going on, or are you just kind of in your head, like, you know, fucking here we go again?
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Continuation, part 2. You know?
Yes, Sergeant.
Yeah. And that went on for a long time. And even one of my friends, we went to his house. My friends wanted to go to his house and have a party. It was Christmas time-ish. And I ended up having to stay in the bedroom and then where he was staying. And I couldn't tell anybody about this because he gave the beds and the floor and the couches to everybody else.
Uh-huh.
So my one friend was like, you guys are doing something weird in there. I know it. Literally, he didn't know that I was actually under duress.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just doing what I'm required to do at the moment just to get it over with. Like, it's just like, get it over. And I think sexually sometimes it is too, right? It's like, let's just have sex, let's do it, let's get it over with, bye, don't see you again.
Right.
Same kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, that person ended up getting out of the military, and I was still in. So I was kind of glad that person did not stay in, you know, because like one less person, you know?
Yeah.
And then the last time it happened was Christmas of 94 in Okinawa. I was actually kind of drunk. It was a big party. And this other Marine was in my room trying to act like he was taking care of me. And I already sensed what was going on, what he was going to try to do. And sure enough, next thing you know, he brought me in the bathroom, locked the door, because my roommate, my best friend, actually wasn't in the room. He was still drinking in the other rooms. And he pulled down my pants. He was sitting on the toilet. Like when you get hurt on your other end from going through this, you know, sometimes it hurts, sometimes you're just used to it, like I was at that point. But this person, it was huge, you know, and it just went straight in, and I was sore for like 2 weeks, and I couldn't even go to the doctor because I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
To say, why am I bleeding out my ass?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hoping that this stuff goes away and just get back to normal. Luckily, that never happened again with him, but I intended that to not happen again because I think that was the very last time I let someone use me without my consent.
Uh-huh.
So it never happened after that. But thankful my best friend, who I was telling about earlier, really helped toughen me up because he came from the hood. Like he was a hardcore, you don't say anything bad about me, I'll just punch you in the face, no questions asked, like that.
Yeah.
And I had to teach him how to calm that down. Let me be your calmer, but you be make me more aggressive. So we complimented each other that that we were able to stay best friends, stay in the military, protect each other like we did, and teach each other our weaknesses.
That's cool.
So, you know, if anything, I got that from my friend, you know, like I'm glad it was because of him I probably wasn't as timid anymore. You know what I mean? Because he was probably my savior in that aspect to take control. Because he would never let anybody say anything bad about him or me.
Yeah.
And he had such a temper where you just don't say something without getting a punch. I mean, that's his mentality.
Tell him about the experiences that you were having?
He knows some of this stuff now, yes.
But not until after you were out of the Marines?
Yeah. I haven't seen him actually in 20 years, but we talk often. on the phone, when randomly send each other weird gifts, Marine Corps gifts, He was my savior as to me helping myself from letting it to continue to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the VA, I actually went to the VA to tell them about this story. It's like, well, we can't do anything about that. We can't prove it.
What's the VA?
Yeah, because, I was raped in the military. So I finally decided to report it to the military.
Okay.
Like 2 years ago. And I went in there for my little meeting to get approved for, all this stuff. He's like, I could tell when you walked in here, you didn't have PTSD and this didn't bother you. And it was a male. And I don't usually get males, but I don't have a choice, right? Because I don't like getting male doctors.
Sure. So he said that because you don't have PTSD that you're...
Well, he's like, well, you don't look like you have PTSD. You walked in here with no problem.
Yeah, that's such a classic. People are like, why aren't you more fucked up? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
Am I supposed to come here on a whole bunch of depressants for you to give it to me? Like, is that what it takes for me to be on depressants?
Down in the office? Are you going to take me seriously? Like, is that what you want?
And believe it or not, I got denied that claim because they can't prove it. It's like, I can tell you one of their names right now.
Yeah.
Go start the investigation. Well, we can't do that now. I'm giving you information for you to go do your job. But you can't investigate it, but yet you're not going to believe me that it happened, so you're not going to compensate me and help me mentally that way.
Yeah. It's also so much bigger than just like
a check off on a box.
Well, yeah, and it's like not only is this about my experience, but I'm trying to help you prevent other people in your service from experiencing this thing that happened to me and from, this he got discharged, the first guy, right?
They both did honorably.
Eventually, yeah. It's a much more ideal kind of discharge. Your honor.
Mm-hmm. Sure, buddy.
Yeah, but it's just so funny that people, when people have something else at stake. I mean, clearly that guy did not want to deal with this investigation. I'm sure it wouldn't have looked good for him to have been in charge of these kind of people, or in my experience, and it does seem pretty consistent. People that don't believe victims of this kind of stuff generally have some sort of a vested interest in them not telling the truth. I don't think people default to not believing victims unless they just don't want to come to terms with the fact that this stuff happens. Most of the time, it's like family members who don't believe that another family member molested another family member or something like that.
Parents.
Exactly. And so when you find people that are so like adamantly denying your story, it just has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them.
It's a slap in my face.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I can walk in here confident doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means that I'm a survivor and you're not recognizing that.
Yeah.
You're looking at me as a victim and I'm looking at you from my eyes that I'm a survivor.
Yes. And people say the same thing about me with sometimes in the TikTok comments, they'll be like, there's no way this actually happened to you. Like you're making jokes about it. Like I don't believe for a second that you actually got molested. Like you're just because
their comment matters to you right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's totally not, I don't worry about it whatsoever, but it's funny that people find just any reason to not believe you. And even if you're at the point where you feel comfortable talking about it, I
had one negative comment on that video on TikTok.
What was it?
And this lady says, I am so sick and tired of hearing this theme song on everybody's profile. I was like, I just said all that, and the only thing you took out of this was the song that I chose that everybody else is using. I said,
I don't like Lady Gaga. That was the song, right? It was Bad Romance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's all you got out of it was the song? It was what got you? I say, this is why. And then I was, and I actually did respond back that, this is all you got out of it. And I say, it's people like you that people like us start judging hard.
Yeah. And also it's like, that's another example of somebody who it's very unlikely that she just doesn't like the song. It's very likely that she has somebody in her life who was accused of something like this and doesn't want to acknowledge any of this kind of stuff, regardless of who it's coming from. Because talking about it causes her to remember or have to relive certain things that she might...
They don't want to because they never dealt with the issue. They suppress the issue.
Yeah.
It's like fake news. Fake news, right?
Yeah. They just don't want. They'll find anything to talk about that isn't the content of the actual video, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the sound in the video or like people often comment on my nose, like I look like I have a deviated septum. And, I'll do a video about getting molested and people will be like, hey, you should really get a nose job. And I'm like, I'm glad I made this. That was the point of the
when I used to go to the VA, because they wanted, I did try antidepressants back in the day and I didn't like them. The VA did, because I was talking to the VA doctors about, this psyche issue, right?
Yeah.
And they said, well, we can try this. We tried this. And it just didn't make me. I wanted to still be me. I didn't want to be like, I smoke pot 24/7, you know what I mean? Because that's really, when I was taking it, that's how I felt. I didn't feel like doing anything at this point. I was like, I can't be doing this. But, like when I got to a point where I was satisfied with what I've done to fix and feel good about myself, and it still affects me because I'm not the skinny twink I used to be now, right? I'm more of a daddy type person. Yeah. So of course, that has an effect on me because less people want me. The therapist used to tell me, you need to write a book. And about 3 different therapists told me that randomly. I was like, well, if you write it for me, I can sign off on it. You know what I mean? Because I don't know how to write a book. I actually did try to write, but sometimes you can't always put everything in a timeline until it's like I would have probably 5,000 stickies to figure out where these all go in, because your thoughts start running. Yeah. No, that was later on. This was before, you know what I mean? Well, and then describing, like I described to you, like when I saw my brother, I didn't want to say it on here, but can you imagine a man bent over with his butthole in your face and he's telling you touch it? Right. Like those are the graphics that you need to put into a book and put out there, because those are the image people who don't believe that this happened to you need to have in their head. Then maybe they will take more action when that child or that person comes to you that, this person did this to them. That first reaction would be like, oh my God, I remember a story like this, and that image, did they did that to you? Oh my God, who is this? You know what I mean? Yeah, I think it's super important to not sugarcoat any of these experiences and make it less significant, because you have to realize what we see. Yeah. Because we don't forget it. We don't ever forget the images. Yeah. And also for future victims, if everybody's just talking about sort of the minutia of the molestation and not the severity of it, it'll make people feel even more isolated in their experiences, rather than having people, sharing all of the details. And that's been a theme of this podcast, is like sort of like, no holding back. I think it's important that we talk about these things exactly as they are, however severe, or no matter where you are on the spectrum, it's all happening constantly. And until we recognize and accept that this stuff is happening, we're not going to be able to make a difference in preventing it. So I agree with you, man. And it's like, no matter how uncomfortable if it's making you uncomfortable, then you're probably going in the right direction, because that's the feeling that we need to alleviate from these conversations. Yeah. So I think you should absolutely write a book. I think that's a great idea. And like when I was trying to tell you, like when I remember that innocence, like I remember the flowers, I remember the fresh dirt, I remember the shovel. You know what I mean? Like these are all those memories that you have to really kind of put in someone's head, that this is such a, like a fairy dream Disney thought that you had while your uncle was planting flowers. It's like Disney. Yeah, right. And then like 2 years later, he's like, well, Disney's gone. Yeah, we're magic evaporated. We moved on to porn already. You know what I mean? At a young age, basically. Right, right. Yeah, I mean, porn is definitely an understatement. Yeah. It's so weird being thrown into that environment of just like sexual experiences that normally take you years with a person in high school or whenever it happens. When you get to my age, right? I mean, you probably have done it all by the time you get to my age. And I literally have done it all, you know what I mean? Because when I was doing the prostitution, I didn't care if it was a girl or a boy. Right. Show me the money and I'll show you what you want. Did you have, were there female clients? Mm-hmm. Not as many as the men, because the men seem to be more perverted, to be honest with you. Yeah. I mean, at least where I'm from, it was always men on the streets, right. Cruising in their cars and trying to find boys. Yeah, that's really fascinating stuff. Do you think at that age it was pretty clear that you were underage? Like, were they typically targeting you because you were underage? Most likely. Yeah. I was just skinny, blonde hair. I mean, apparently, looks doesn't matter. It's just about you being the boy. Yeah. Right? I just want, the pedophiles, right? They just want a boy. That's all you need to be for them to trigger them to get a boner. You know what I mean? Literally. Yeah. And then they act because now it overwhelms them that they got to have it. Now, I just to kind of clarify where I kind of became a survivor, or I became a survivor. In 2012, I lost everything I owned. I had 2 suitcases of clothes. I sold all the stuff that I could. My uniforms were stolen from the military because I lived in a bad neighborhood. And so I took the last bit of money that I had, and I took a one-way bus ticket to Orlando, Florida, and went from house to house, shelters, all that, trying to get myself. And I started my master's degree, fall of 2012, while I was homeless. And then the military did pay me to go back to school. So I took that money that they gave me each month while I was working valet. I worked night because I maximized my money at nighttime with guest check-in. Yeah. So I took that money they gave me and I got myself my own little apartment. I started buying, a couch and silverware, and I had to buy everything. So I, for the millionth time, start over. I ain't starting over no more. I'm done with this bullshit. Mm-hmm. So I'm good. But, and then I landed the internship with the government. And they liked me so much, they brought me on permanently. And now I live in National Harbor, Maryland, which is kind of like they say bougie area, but I do very well for myself. I'm happy with myself. So I think that's where I became a survivor. Like, I think that was my last straw. Like, if any more bad shit happens to me in my life, I don't know what's going to happen. There's going to be a shitstorm going on in America, right? Because I'm going to freak out because I used to have temper problems when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I get angry very quick, especially when I was coming to that suicide moment, like when things were happening, I just felt like, oh, it'd just be easier if I wasn't here, Yeah. So by the time you forgive and you're able to move on, not forget, but move on, be happy, know that you weren't the one that created the situation, they created it to you. And you forgive yourself. I probably didn't have to do some of the sexual things, but I couldn't help it, I still have issues with that portion of my life. But I have what I need now, except I still don't have that one thing that everybody wants to have. Just love. That's it. Yeah. I don't need anything else. Right. I'm happy. No, don't get me wrong. I like being in my own home by myself, do what I want, but that was my last straw, I think. And I just wasn't going to let it beat me. If I can go through all that other stuff, if I can take looking at someone's ass unwanted, I can get over being homeless because at least you're by yourself and you have a rack. You know what I mean?
I also think that there's something to be said for being able to get to the point where you're at now on your own and be at a place where you have everything that you want other than love, and then being able to allow that to come in, having everything else in place, and allowing it to come in a state of mind that you're at now, which is clearly moved on from these experiences that you've had, which I think a big part of it, you kind of have to do alone. It's internal healing, it's not dependent on your abuser or anybody else. It's something that you have the ability to do as a victim, as a survivor, or to become a survivor. And which is honestly awesome to know that it's like it's up to you. But you don't have to rely on anybody else for this. It's completely.
That can also be a downfall because I became so independent that sometimes I think it could also be my flaw, especially when it comes to like I used to like when I go on dates and stuff. Sometimes I feel like, are you using me?
Yeah.
It's always going to be there, unfortunately. I don't think I can get rid of that part. I just have to trust the situation. And I'm really good at picking out flags. And this is why I'm still single, because I can catch those flags. They could be 5 miles away and I see that flag coming. It's like, done, bye. And so far I have been right. So I think for someone to break that barrier for me to say, I love you, has to be a good person.
And I think that the person that you will inevitably meet that gives you that and you give them that is going to be you're going to have such a better foundation for that whole experience, being in the state of mind that you're in now, rather than, if you had, for example, fallen in love with somebody when all of this stuff was going on, you might've been falling in love with them for completely different reasons, just for somebody to not be treating you like shit, well,
I'm going to tell you, I can give you an example. Sometimes I fell for people because they were sexually into stuff that I was kind of curious about.
Uh-huh.
And that's all I cared about. And sometimes, the right person emotionally is there, but then they weren't there sexually. And when I thought maybe I didn't need it to be a sex, you know what I mean? So I don't know if it's always going to be a struggle, but I'm hoping to find that one where it doesn't matter how much I get the sex or what type of sex, because it's just going to be good because I know now it's coming from the heart.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
have no doubt that you'll find that person.
And until that happens, this is where I am.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it's a lot better than where you were.
That's for sure.
Quite a way.
I'd rather deal with this issue than deal with all, still dealing with being a victim. Because I do classify them differently. I am not a victim no more.
Yeah.
I classify myself as a survivor. And now my goal is to get my message out so that maybe we can create more.
I love that, man. And you're already doing that. You've already done that, and it's an ongoing process, but with that TikTok alone, I mean, you're helping so many people. And
which is funny, I did get like 22,000 views. And then I was going through that For Your Page stuff, and I saw all these guys showing off their bodies and dancing. I was like, damn, you got 50,000 views off of that.
Yeah.
Where's the priority? So you're telling me it's still all aesthetic, right? It's still about, it's not what behind that person who's probably doing it for other reasons we don't know, right? Because
yeah,
they might have issues too. But it amazes me where, you show someone's body, you'll get 500,000 likes. You show someone's problem and they're like, yeah, you'll catch the nice ones.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's a big problem with TikTok is that it's just sort of the nature of the topic, at the moment, it's not a priority for an app like TikTok to be putting that kind of content out. People go on TikTok to watch minors sexualizing themselves. That's basically all TikTok is. It's just cool to still be able to use a platform like that and still reach 22,000 people that, that's 22,000 people who may never have had the option to view a story like that. I mean, you were really helping people, so it's easy to compare the views and the likes to all of these other people. But in reality, you got to just look at the impact.
I had more of an impact. I had more of the emotional impact on them, especially based on the private comments and the public comments that they made.
Yes, of course. It's one of those things where it's just not even a competition. It's just completely different. But I totally empathize with you there. And it is always sort of frustrating when you see somebody take a 15-second video of just abs and it's like, oh, you have 14 million views.
It's I've seen lots of those wanted and unwanted, you know what I mean? I don't really care about that crap anymore.
Yeah, but it's just it's just important to recognize the amount of people that you're actually helping. Nobody's watching a video of some dude with abs thinking to themselves, I'm gonna get my life together and really recover from my trauma. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the impact that you're having. So,
and then I got lucky that you scrolled upon it because you gave me, and I was quite shocked. I'm not gonna lie. I was just like, you wrote this little thing to me. I was like, all I could say is yes. Pretty much. I didn't even say, apology for not even saying, well, thank you for watching and all this other stuff. I just kind of like, oh, my message can go.
Not at all, man. No need to apologize. I was
just like, I have a chance to tell my story a little bit, and maybe I can reach more people.
Yes, and you will. So, actually, some people that followed me on TikTok tagged me in your video. In the
Did they really?
Video? Yeah, that was actually how I found it. So
no way.
It's so cool because there are people that listen to this podcast who found me on TikTok who now tag me in videos of people that they think would be good to come on the podcast. So that was how so shout out to everybody who's been tagging in the
yeah, because I started tagging people that I see going through similar stuff. I tag them to my video.
Yeah.
Don't say anything. I just tag them and then let you reach out if you need to.
Yeah.
Leave it to them at that point.
And seeing somebody like yourself share, sort of just bear it all. It's so encouraging to hear because it's like wherever you are, no matter what experience you went through molestation wise or otherwise, whatever the thing is, seeing somebody be that vulnerable makes you feel like you can be vulnerable too.
Yeah. So it took me 2 weeks to do that video because I started playing around with other videos just to make fun, just to get used to it. But what I really wanted to do is 3 times a week I put out a 1-minute video of a snapshot to actually get you through that whole book.
Yeah, man, make it a series. I mean, that could be your whole foundation for the book. And you can just do these videos, and then by the time you're done with it, you have the whole material for the book.
And just take little bits and pieces like you did here with me.
Yeah, man. And you'll find as you go along, like that was a lot of my experience with stand-up, is figuring out how to present this stuff to people in a way that allows them to laugh and not just feel bad for me. And it takes time, but it's just experimenting, you know, it's trial and error. And as you go, you'll find the sweet spot that allows people to empathize with you and be vulnerable themselves. And, you know, I just think that it's really inspiring what you're doing. And
thanks. Likewise, because, you know, it's nice to be able to have this conversation where we both understand each other in a forum. You know, like, and I understand the comedy, you know, because I do the same thing, you know, like some people ask me, why am I so open with my personal life? Well, if I bottle it in, then
I've tried bottling it in, and I'll take being open every time, you know, having experienced both sides of it.
I have a clause when I go on dating. I always say, just remember, you can ask me anything you want, but all I ask is you be prepared for an answer.
Yeah.
Because if you ask me that question and then that comes out, it's a turnoff, right? Because people don't want to hear that stuff. But at the same time, you got to start something new with honesty.
Yeah.
So if you ask me a question and I avoid it, and then you find out later, then you're like, oh my God, you got baggage. I don't have baggage. My baggage is gone.
Yes.
The thing is, can you handle what I went through?
You're the one who's assigning this weight to what I'm saying that you think that I'm still dealing with, but it's like, no,
Right.
like I'm good, dude. I have similar experiences when I go on dates, because it's like, you know, people ask me like, oh, so what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a comedian. And they're like, oh, what do you do stand up about? And I was like, well, here we go.
It goes right into your personal life, right? Yeah. And it's almost unavoidable because it's part of who you are and then what you're doing. So, and then most people can't deal with that. They'll give us the sympathy and the hugs and all these messages, but when it's face to face to want to love you, they don't know if they can handle that part of you because they're not used to it.
Well, I do think that a lot of it depends on where you are at with the healing process.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people can feel it, and this is similar to stand-up. Like when I first started doing stand-up about it, it was clear that I was not at a point where I had, you know, fully healed, and I still haven't. You know, it's an ongoing process, but people can feel the level of comfort that you have speaking about
with it. Yep.
So if you are on a date, and I found like I'll drop that on the first date, like no problem. I have no issue discussing this kind of stuff like immediately. And I think that when people can sense that you're not holding on to anything and that this isn't going to be, you know, it doesn't have to be even a serious conversation. Like it doesn't have to weigh down the first date or anything. I think if people can feel that you're okay, the amount of weight that the things that you say have just depends on how you say them and where you're.
Because like, you know, like you, I'm a jokester. So when people ask me certain questions, I can just let it out in a joking manner.
Yeah.
And then they're like, you serious?
Yeah.
I'm serious. You know, you serious? Yeah. Why? You know, because I can talk about it because I don't hold it in. And I think that's the key. You can't hold it in.
Yeah.
I still have days, you know, like I was alone on Christmas and I was listening to some songs and, you know, sometimes I do get emotional still.
Of course. It's
never going to leave me completely. I mean, obviously I'm not, you know, some superhero who I can just vanish my feelings, you know?
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't be a bad superhero.
Yeah. I do think it's just like being willing to let yourself feel whatever you feel. If you're feeling sad, fucking let it out. You know, it's the problem is that you run into is when you feel like you can't express what you're feeling. And especially with this kind of trauma, you know, I get sad about it too, of course.
Or if you're too masculine to let it out.
Right. It's so freeing when you let yourself speak and feel about these things, how you really do feel about it. Not putting on some sort of facade of trying to convince people that you're okay when you're really not. Like being honest with yourself about these things is so important, and it just allows you to move past it or just to heal from it. You know, like you said, it'll always be with you, but it doesn't have to be a thing that you're afraid to talk about.
I don't hesitate.
Yeah,
you ask me, you get the answers.
Yeah. Coming from the perspective that you have now, which is, you know, clearly healed and moved on from these experiences that you've had to a point now where you no longer feel like you're just meant to be used. You have more self-worth and value and just general happiness. What advice would you give to somebody who has been through something similar to you, who's hoping to get to the point that you're at now?
So your question is basically, how do they get from victim to survivor?
Yeah.
For me personally, me tired of being sad. I mean, I'm going to get emotional because now it's,
That's okay, man. Don't worry about it. You know, it's just let it out. It's just these are emotions. We're meant to feel them, you know?
I would just say don't let anybody stop your happiness, you know?
Yeah.
You have to know your self-worth. If you know you're worth a lot, then you stop forgiving yourself. I know the value of me, and I won't settle for anybody in my life that doesn't respect that value or have the value of themselves even. I have very limited friends because I believe in, you know, being true to yourself, loving yourself, forgiving the stuff that's happened, and really push forward as much as you can. And most of the time we have to do it ourselves. You can go to doctors, they're probably going to help you, they're going to give you medications, but then do you want to be on medication your whole life? I don't know. That wasn't an option. My medication has to be my self-worth. I think the main thing is to love yourself. Just downright, if nobody else is going to love you, the only one that you can count on that's going to love you is yourself.
Totally, man.
That's the only constant you will ever have.
And knowing that you're worthy of that love, you know,
Yes.
no matter what you've been through and how many people have taken advantage of you, it doesn't make you any less worthy.
Damn. I promised I wasn't going to do this.
No, it's fine, man.
It is, you got to know your value.
Yeah.
And don't settle. There's always somebody else who's just as valuable as you that you'll be a match.
Yes.
Don't rush into it. Don't get into like when I went to Florida, it wasn't just to go to Florida. It was because I need to get rid of all the negative.
Yeah.
I need to refocus. And sometimes when you live around negative or you're not happy in a city that you're in or you just don't, you know, things that you were doing weren't as good as you should have been doing, I need to remove all that negativity for me to be more positive in my life.
Yeah.
So I went to Florida because of that. And that's where I found my ex who actually helped raise me up to feel better about myself. And I could actually have a person like this who is doing very well for themselves. They're positive. They like to do things. They've got a great life. So I think my other message would be just remove the negativity. Don't care if it's your mom, your dad, your brother. I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to love yourself, you need to remove the negative because otherwise you're never going to get to that point. Luckily, it sounds like you have very supportive parents.
I do.
You know, so that's good. You know, like me, I didn't have that. I don't even know who my dad is, you know.
Yeah.
I'm close to finding him, but I don't even know if I want to know him because, one, he doesn't even know about me. And two, I became the man I am by myself.
Yeah.
I don't need to wonder who you are, what I would have been a better man if you were in my life. You know what I mean?
I do.
The only thing I wish that maybe he was around is maybe he could have been the one I went to maybe to stop a lot of this stuff. I don't know. But it wasn't the case, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't the case, but the person that you are today, you may never have become had it been
exactly
something else. So I think it's just being appreciative of where you are and recognizing that you are totally worthy of happiness. And it's just these things happen, and it's the reality of the world that we're living in. And you don't have to be defined by them. You don't have to be tied down by these past experiences. You can transform them into something that not only empowers you, but empowers other people. So
exactly,
it's all a matter of perspective. And I think the perspective and story that you shared today is just really so encouraging for people to hear. It's encouraging for me to hear. And I just really appreciate you, Shannon. And
I really appreciate you bringing me on, even though I got a little.
Don't. I couldn't be more okay with it, man. Just right now, as you were feeling that, the worst thing to do would be to be like, no, don't stop feeling. You know what I mean? But you just let it happen. You know, it's all just natural shit. And it's like, I think that there's so much merit to just allowing yourself to feel how you truly feel. Listen, man, thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure.
It was a great time.
Yes, I can't thank you enough. It was
anytime. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. I'm glad you saw someone tagged you, whoever that was.
Yeah.
Give them a shout out for me.
Yeah. And
hopefully they listen to it.
Yeah, we'll have to do a follow-up episode when you get your book done. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Talk with you again soon, Shannon.
Have a happy new year.
You too.